In this third part of our sequencer series, let's just take a look at paths. Let's just look at what a path is in Unreal, how we can use it, and let's see how we can attach objects to it so they move on this path. If you've ever used something like Adobe Illustrator, you're probably familiar with paths. Paths are like a line, except we can add curves to them, so we can get a nice curvature going using paths. If you've not used something like Illustrator, well, we'll see paths working in Unreal. So to add a path, let's come down in our place actors. Let's come down here to cinematic, and in at least our camera path for sequencers, particularly or specifically called a camera rig rail. Let's add one of these in here, and we can see it's there. So real quick, just to make things a little less confusing, I'm going to delete my directional light. I'm going to delete the explosion, the fire, and the point light. Things looked a little messy with all of that in there, so let's make things a little nicer. Let's just delete all that so they're not keyframed. All we have going on right now is the door opening. I'm also going to delete the audio. And actually, even for the door, I'm going to delete the location and scale, so all the doors are going to do is rotate. So now, if I play this, it should just open the door. Exactly like we had it initially. I just wanted to remove all that extra noise so that we can see this new noise that we're going to add in without getting too confused. Okay, so we come back here. And this is our camera rail. It's kind of cool. Unreal gives it like a model of an actual camera rail, so you can imagine a camera on this moving around. I think that's pretty cool. And it has these points. It comes in with 2 points. This is the start point, and this is another point. I could drag this point. We see the rail starts to increase in size. We can move it in any direction we want. We can even rotate it, and you can see that like curves our rail. This is what I mean by we can get curvature with this. And finally, you can scale it. If you see these 2 little white dots that are moving when I scale it, but I wouldn't quite suggest using scale on your curves. You can use it, but it's better to just move and rotate. That's usually the easier way. So right now we only have 2 points. We have this beginning point and this end point, and I can move the end point anywhere I want. We could also, if I was to click off of the camera and come back, you can see here it says current position on rail. If I click and I drag this, we can see this position on rail is moving. So it goes from 0 to 1, and it kind of represents how we're moving along this line. So let's add another point to this line. Very easy to add another point. You just hold Alt. We're making a copy when we hold Alt. And I drag out here, and you can see not only is this point there, but it's added a new point here. And I can move this point maybe upwards. We can click and drag again. We can maybe drag it a little bit this way. And just maybe drag it around to look kind of like a spiral. So I'm just going to add a few points. So now this kind of looks like a spiral, not that great, but it goes around and then it goes down. Does a little twist at the end. You can always click on a point and we can edit it directly if you want by rotating it or moving it around. And when we click on a point, you'll see that these 2 little dots pop up. These are our spline control points. When I rotate them, you can see these points are moving. You could also, instead of rotating it, come here, drag these points around. Rotating it does basically the same thing, but being able to control these spline points through location, this is how, again, it's done in something like Illustrator, and this is traditional spline control is you have a point, and these points have something called control points. That's what these are, and that's what controls the curvature of it. But Unreal, a little nice. It lets us just use a rotation on the main node rather than having to control these spline points. Anyway, so I have this interesting looking spline here, and I want to animate something on it. To start, I'm just going to move my entire spline back here so we can actually see the thing animated on it. And maybe just to start again, I'm going to add a cube in here. So this cube is now going to follow this spline around. So to start, when we want something to follow a spline, the easiest way to do it is make sure its location is at 0, 0, 0. And then let's make sure to add the cube into the sequencer. And what I want to do is I want to hit add track. I want to attach it, and I want to attach it to my camera rig rail. So now this thing, you could see my cube move right where the rig rail is, and our cube is now attached to it. It doesn't really do anything yet, and that's because if you remember, there's this current position on rail. You can see when I move that, the cube moves. So really, we want to animate this current position on rail. Easiest way again to do that, start it at 0, hit this add keyframe button, and you can see now there's this current position on rail. I'm going to go all the way down to the end, set it to 1, and add a new keyframe there. So now you can see it's animated. Again, let's take a real quick look at this working. And it's following that spline perfectly. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that as it's following the spline, my spline rotates in different directions, but this cube doesn't quite, this cube doesn't rotate with it. It's just kind of staying the same. Very easy to fix that. Under our current position, there's lock orientation to rail. I can click that, and now you can see my cube is rotating as I move along this timeline. So that's how we use this rail component. We can attach things to it, and we can make things fly around with it. We can even, for example, instead of P explosion, I can even attach a particle effect to it. So let's take this P fire, let's reset its position to 0, and let us make sure that it's in the sequencer, attach to the cube. Now we play this, and when I walk in here, not only does the cube move, but the fire moves with the cube. Maybe I don't want the cube. The nice thing here is that the cube is not, the fire is attached to the cube, and the cube is attached to the rail. So this is nice because we can move this fire relative to the cube. I can move the fire slightly upwards now. And if I was to play this, you can see. Oh, I do need to keyframe it. So that's one thing to remember. I have to move this up here in P fire and make sure I keyframe the location. And at the very end, make sure I add another keyframe. So now when I play this, we can see that the fire is on top of the cube, and our cube is going to move through the spline, and the fire is going to stay on top of that. So now we can have like kind of complex followings where we can have one thing follow the spline, and everything else can be relatively attached to it and move just, next to it, which is pretty cool. Lastly, just with this video, I want to look at, I don't like this cube anymore. I want to replace it with a different asset. And I have this BP duck that I brought in. It's just a little duck mesh that I've put in a blueprint. And I want to use that instead. I don't like this cube anymore. The cube looks kind of stupid. Let's replace it with a BP duck. So let me pull out my BP duck. And now I could delete my cube from here, add the duck, and I could do the whole thing over again. Or let me set the duck to 0, 0, 0. Right click where it says cube and assign actor, and just replace with selected because that is my duck currently selected. I could also select it in here, but because my duck is selected, I'm just going to do replace with selected. I do that. Cube is no longer there. Cube's now out here. Let's get rid of this cube. And when I play this, you can see now it's my duck that's following me around, which is awesome. So let's play it, walk in the trigger, and we can see now that cube has been replaced with a duck, and the duck is now following the spline. Also, real quick, you'll note that in my Unreal playback, things are a little laggy. It won't be laggy when you guys try it. It's just a little laggy because my computer's not very good, and I'm recording while I'm doing this. but things should work just fine for you guys. Anyway, that's been a quick look at how we can use splines. Splines are very powerful for moving things on a curvature. We can get things to move in like a nice organic motion. We can even parent things to it. We can parent things to things that were parented to it to get things to move relatively. Real quick, just to give another example of parenting things relatively, if I was to make a copy of this duck, for example, oh, I made a copy of the camera rail, but if I was to make a copy of just a duck, and we added the duck into our scene, duck 2, and we attached that to duck 1, now we can see duck 1 follows right behind duck 2. So ducks, for example, you know, you got the mother duck and a bunch of ducklings behind that. Well, you could animate them all moving together just like this. So that's the power of splines. In the next video, we are going to look at cameras. That's going to be our final video on sequencer. And you could also imagine using your camera with a spline track. So you get a nice smooth curvature with our camera. But that was it for this video. Thank you for watching.